In 2021, the cost of shipping a single container exploded from around $2,000 to more than $20,000 in just months. Overnight, the price of moving goods across the ocean became 10 times more expensive, and the consequences rippled everywhere. But behind the chaos, something else was happening. While the world struggled to keep supply chains alive, the biggest shipping giants were reporting record-breaking profits. How did these companies gain so much power over the global economy, and why does almost every country depend on them? To understand that, we have to look back to 1956 and a man named Malcolm McLean. McLean was a trucking entrepreneur from North Carolina who was frustrated by how long it took to load and unload ships. In those days, shipping cargo was a labor-intensive nightmare. Workers, called longshoremen, would individually carry bags, crates, barrels, and bales onto ships, item by item. A single ship could take days or even weeks to unload. It was expensive, it was slow, and it was prone to theft. McLean had a different idea. What if you could pack everything into a single, standardized steel box, load the whole box onto the ship with a crane, and unload it just as fast on the other side? No unpacking, no repacking. Box goes on, box comes off, truck picks it up, done. On April 26, 1956, his ship, the Ideal X, left Newark carrying 58 of these metal containers. It was the birth of containerization. The economics were staggering. Before containerization, loading a ship cost around $5.86 per ton. After containerization, that cost dropped to just 16 cents per ton. Shipping wasn't just faster, it was 36 times cheaper. Over the next 2 decades, containerization spread across every major port in the world. Trade exploded. Globalization as we know it was made possible, not by the internet, not by free trade agreements, but this humble steel box. But here's the thing about revolutions. They tend to create empires. Today, the container shipping industry is dominated by 3 players. Let's meet them. Number 1, MSC, the Mediterranean Shipping Company. MSC is the largest container shipping company in the world. It was founded in 1970 by a Neapolitan sea captain named John Luigi Aponte, who bought a second-hand cargo ship and started carrying goods between the Mediterranean and Somalia. Today, MSC operates over 700 ships with a fleet capacity exceeding 4 million 20-foot equivalent units, or TEUs, the standard measure of container capacity. It's a private company, which means it doesn't have to report earnings publicly. The Aponte family is estimated to be worth $30 billion. The company is headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland. Number 2, Maersk, the Danish giant. Founded in 1904, for decades the definitive titan of global shipping. Maersk operates some of the largest ships ever built, vessels so enormous they are literally longer than the Empire State Building is tall. The company is publicly traded on the Copenhagen Stock Exchange and has been aggressively expanding beyond shipping into logistics, warehousing, and air freight, positioning itself as the UPS of the seas, a door-to-door supply chain operator rather than just a shipping line. Number 3, CMA CGM, the French challenger. Founded in Marseille in 1978, like MSC, it's a privately held family company controlled by the Saade family. CMA CGM has been one of the most aggressive acquirers in the industry, snapping up competitors like APL, NOL, and most recently buying a significant stake in the Los Angeles Long Beach terminal. It also made headlines by purchasing Louis Vuitton's freight logistics arm and investing heavily in liquefied natural gas-powered vessels. Together, these 3 companies control over 40% of global container shipping capacity. But the real story isn't just their individual size, it's the alliances they've built. Here's where it gets truly monopolistic, and here where regulators have struggled to keep up. Because the big 3 don't just compete with each other, they also cooperate through something called shipping alliances. These are formal agreements where competing companies share ships, share routes, coordinate schedules, and split costs. In other industries, this would be called a cartel. In shipping, it's called normal business. For years, the industry was organized into three mega-alliances. The 2M Alliance brought together Maersk and MSC, the two largest companies in the world, in a sweeping capacity-sharing agreement covering the most profitable trade routes, Asia to Europe, Asia to North America, transatlantic. The Ocean Alliance paired CMA CGM with Chinese state carrier COSCO, Taiwan's Evergreen, and Hong Kong's OOCL. And the Alliance grouped Germany's Hapag-Lloyd with Japan's ONE and Taiwan's Yangmeng. These three alliances together controlled roughly 80 to 85% of container shipping capacity on the world's major trade routes. There was effectively no route you could ship goods on that wasn't dominated by alliance members. Now, you might be asking, isn't this illegal? Don't antitrust laws exist precisely to prevent companies from coordinating like this? In most industries, yes, but shipping has a remarkably long history of regulatory exemptions. In the United States, the Shipping Act of 1984 explicitly allowed ocean carriers to enter into agreements that would be illegal under standard antitrust law, as long as they were filed with the Federal Maritime Commission. Europe had similar block exemptions. The logic was that shipping routes require enormous capital investment, and some coordination helps ensure reliability and prevents ruinous price wars, which ultimately harm shippers. The result was a perfectly legal oligopoly, hiding in plain sight. The big three didn't always dominate like this. 20 years ago, the container shipping industry was far more fragmented. There were dozens of meaningful players: Evergreen, Yangming, K-Line, Mitsui, Hamburg Süd, APL, and many others. Competition was fierce, rates were low, shippers had choices. Then came a perfect storm of consolidation. First, the ships got bigger. Container ships went from carrying a few thousand TEUs in the 1980s to carrying 24,000 TEUs today. The largest, the MSC Irina, can carry over 24,000 containers in a single voyage. Building ships this large requires billions of dollars in capital. Only the largest companies could afford them. And once they had them, smaller competitors simply couldn't match the cost per container economics. Second, a series of economic shocks, the 2008 financial crisis, chronic overcapacity in the early 2010s, drove shipping rates so low that many carriers were literally losing money on every voyage. Between 2009 and 2016, the industry lost billions. Companies were desperate to cut costs and find scale. The mergers came fast. Maersk acquired Hamburg Süd. CMA CGM swallowed APL. COSCO merged with China Shipping to become a state-backed giant. Japan's three major carriers, K-Line, MOL, and NYK, merged their container businesses into one. By 2017, 10 companies controlled what had previously been split among 30. And then COVID hit, and everything changed again. In early 2020, shipping rates were at historic lows. The industry was struggling. Then the pandemic scrambled global supply chains in ways nobody anticipated. Factories shut down, then they reopened, but consumers, stuck at home, suddenly wanted to buy things instead of experiences. Demand for goods exploded, and the ships, the ports, and the containers couldn't keep up. What followed was one of the most extraordinary pricing events in modern economic history. Before COVID, shipping a standard 40-foot container from China to the United States East Coast cost around $2,000. By early 2022, that same container cost over $20,000, a tenfold increase. The big three and their alliance partners made money on a scale that defied comprehension. Maersk, which had been worth roughly $16 billion before the pandemic, recorded annual profits of over $30 billion in 2022 alone, more profit in a single year than it made in the previous decade combined. MSC, privately held, was estimated to have made even more. CMA CGM's annual profit in 2022 was roughly $25 billion. $300 billion in 3 years. And while they were doing that, American consumers were paying more for everything, from furniture to electronics to food. Small businesses that relied on imported goods were being crushed by container costs they couldn't absorb or pass on. The Federal Maritime Commission launched investigations, senators held hearings, President Biden signed the Ocean Shipping Reform Act of 2022, giving regulators more power to crack down on unreasonable surcharges and demand transparency. Next time you order something online and it shows up at your door, think about that box. Think about the ship. Think about who owns it. And think about the fact that the most important infrastructure in global trade is controlled by fewer hands than you might think, subject to less oversight than you'd expect, and more fragile than anyone wants to admit. If you found this useful, hit the subscribe button. We analyze the economics and business topics every week. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.